Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf. Wait 1 second, I think I have to sneeze. 1 second. Alright, I just successfully sneezed. Nobody got hurt, as far as I could tell. Today we're studying Daf Chav Daled, Daf 24 of Masechta Moed Katan. Friends, we're continuing discussing Avelus. Avelus and Shabbos, tearing Kriya, other interesting halachis about Avelus. So friends, let's jump in. We are on Daf Chav Daled, Amud Aleph, Masechta Moed Katan, all the way at the top. Ba Minei, Rabbi Yochanan Mishmuel. So Rabbi Yochanan asked a kasha from Shmuel. What in the world does that mean? He called Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael, called Shmuel in Nardo on his cell phone. Ich weiß nicht. The Gemara says, Ba'amina Rabbi Yochanan Mishmuel. So Rabbi Yochanan Taka asked the kasha from Shmuel. I don't know. Maybe through Ravin. Maybe he sent the kasha through Ravin or something. Ich weiß nicht. Yesh Avelus b'Shabbos ve'en Avelus b'Shabbos. Is there mourning on Shabbos or not? Omer lei ein Avelus b'Shabbos. Shmuel says, no. There's no mourning on Shabbos. Yazve Rabbanon kamed Rav. The rabbis were sitting before Rav Papa v'kamri mishmei Shmuel, and they said to Rav Papa in the name of Shmuel, Avil sheshimish mitaso bimei evlo chayiv misa, that a mourner who slept with his wife while in a state of mourning, I imagine that's talking about Shiva, chayiv misa, so he needs to get terminated. Amalei Rav Papa osir itmar. So Rav Papa says, well, hold your horses. It doesn't say that he needs to be terminated. It says that it's forbidden. There's a difference between something being forbidden and something requiring termination. Meaning, termination, of course, being my silly way of saying that he's chayiv misa, the capital punishment. So says Rav Papa, wait a second. No, it's not capital punishment, but it's a lav. You're not allowed to do it. Umishmei Rabbi Yochanan itmar, and it was Taka said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, v'yishmiya lechu mishmei de Shmuel, and if there was anything that you heard in the name of Shmuel, hach yishmiya lechu. This is what you heard in the name of Shmuel. Omer of Tachlifa by Avimi, Omer Shmuel, that says of Tachlifa by Avimi in the name of Shmuel, Avil shelo par v'shelo perim, a mourner who did not grow out his hair, or a mourner who did not rent his garment. Rent, I think it's rent is what I've been seeing. Rent his garments, tear it. What do you want me to tell you? He didn't grow out his hair, he didn't tear his clothing. Chayiv misa, so he's taka chayiv capital punishment. Shnamar, as the pasuk says. Although I imagine it would probably be misa b'dei shamayim. I don't think it's something that you chayiv misas bezdin. Shnamar, as the pasuk says, Roshechem atefro v'gdeichem atefrom. It says by Elazar and Isamar, the children of Aharon, after Nadav and Avihu died. So it says, Voshechem al tifro, do not grow out your hair. V'gdeichem lo sifromu, and do not tear your clothing. V'lo samusu, and you won't die. V'gomer, right? And don't worry about it, you won't die. The implication being that other people, if they were to do that, they will die. Right? The Eibush is saying to Elazar and Isamar, don't grow out your hair, don't tear your clothing. But then won't you be chayiv misa? No, you won't. But other people will, if they did that. So that is so Shmuel says, so Rav Papa says, look, if Shmuel said anything about somebody being chayiv misa as a mourner, it's that. It's for not growing out your hair, it's for not tearing kriya. Omer Afram by Papa says Afram by Papa Tane ba'avur Abasi. Starting the Bryce of Avur Abasi. Avil also the Shamish mitasu, that a mourner is not permitted to have marital relations, bimei evlo, as a mourner. Umaisi be'echod, there's a story about a fellow, sheshimish mitasu, he had marital relations, bimei evlo, as a mourner, v'shamtu chazir mezgviyoso, and pigs, hogs, swine, they chopped his corpse. So okay. Omer Shmuel says Shmuel, Pachaz chova neser rishus. What do you want me to tell you? That Pachaz is a chova and neser is a rishus. Friends, What does this mean? So they're both acronyms. Pachaz is an acronym and Neser is an acronym. Pachaz stands for Priyas Harosh, growing out your hair. Chazer is Kera La'achorav. Oh, by the way, and this is talk. No, 1 second. No, that's not what it means. Anyways, we're talking about on Shabbos, right? So basically, we said at the top of the page that according to Shmuel, there is no Avelus on Shabbos. So if there's no Avelus on Shabbos, so obviously then we shouldn't be doing things on Shabbos that would make us look like mourners. So therefore Shmuel says, Priyas Harosh, uncovering your head, right? Because as a mourner, they would wrap up their head in some kind of very, very fancy way. And only mourners would wrap their head in that way. And therefore, on Shabbos, if Shmuel is saying that there's no mourning on Shabbos, well then your head shouldn't be wrapped. So, Priyas Harosh, revealing your head, i.e. undoing that wrap. Chazar is Kera La'achorav, turning around the tear, i.e. so that the tear is not visible, the torn clothing. Zikifas Hamita, putting your bed regular, right? Because as a mourner, we said you have to overturn your bed. But on Shabbos, you would have your bed regular. So these things are a requirement, chova, right? Revealing your head, turning around the tear of the clothing, making the bed normal, chova. Those things are obligatory. Nilas sandal. Now, wearing leather shoes, tashmish hamita, marital relations, v'chitzas yadayim v'raglayim b'chamen arvis. Washing one's hands and feet in hot water at night, rishus. Those things are optional, right? So I guess if they heated up hot water already before Shabbos, so you'd be able to wash in them at night, his hands and his feet. So those things are optional. Okay, wearing leather shoes and washing up with warm water and marital relations, those things are optional to do on Shabbos. Rav Amar, says Rav, Af Priyas Harosh Rishus, says Rav that in addition to those three things, also revealing your head is also optional as well. Where Shmuel had said that it's obligatory. Now, Shmuel Mashna Nilas Asandal Rishus. Now, fact the Gemara 1 second. Shmuel says that it's up to the mourner on Shabbos if he wants to wear leather shoes or not. Okay, that was one of the optional ones, right? Of course, a mourner does not wear leather shoes, but on Shabbos, he's allowed to wear leather shoes. Now, the Gemara wants to know, why does Shmuel say that is an optional one? Well, not everybody necessarily wears leather shoes, and therefore, if this fellow refrains from wearing leather shoes on Shabbos, people aren't automatically going to say, wait, this guy's a mourner, he's not wearing leather shoes. There's plenty of people who don't wear leather shoes. Well, in fact, the Gemara, Priyas Harosh Nami. Well then, Shmuel, why do you say that revealing the head is obligatory? It's not like everybody walks around without a head covering, right? Meaning, what's the logic to say that a fellow should uncover his head on Shabbos? Well, only mourners cover their heads, and therefore if it's Shabbos and there's no mourning on Shabbos, so then you should uncover your head. The Gemara says, I don't understand. Not everybody uncovers their head. There are some people who aren't mourners who also wrap their head. And therefore, just like we say that, right, Shmuel says that on Shabbos you don't have to put on leather shoes because there's plenty of people who don't wear leather shoes. Well then, why does Shmuel say that you have to undo the head covering? There's plenty of people who are not mourners, right, just regular old people, and they have head coverings. So why does Shmuel say that he has to remove it? So Shmuel Shmuel's consistent with his reasoning to Amr Shmuel that he says, Kol kera she'enu b'shaschimum enu kera, that any I should just avoid that word, any tearing of your garments that isn't at the time of like sort of intense feeling, right? Meaning, when do you tear your clothing? When you hear that somebody passed away? At the time that you hear about it, then you feel very emotional and you tear your clothing. That's the time to tear the clothing. Eino atifa. And any head wrap that isn't like the head wrap of Arabs is not a proper head wrap. I.e., Shmuel as a mourner, Shmuel holds that you should wrap your head in a very specific way, like the Arabs would do it. And therefore, yes, while it might be true that there are plenty of people that maybe wrap their heads, but they don't wrap their heads in the same way that a mourner wraps his head. And that is why Shmuel says that you have to unwrap your head on Shabbos, because the way that your head was wrapped until now made it obvious that you're a mourner, and we can't have you do that on Shabbos. Machver Rav Nachman ad Govi de Dikno. Rav Nachman pointed out that you would wrap your head until the hollows of the cheeks. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Apparently, according to Rav Nachman, it's not wrapping up, down from the top of the head, it's wrapping up from the bottom of the head, and it goes until the hollows of the cheeks. Amr Yaakov, Amr Yochanan, Loshanu Ella, She'ein lo minolim beraglov, aval yesh lo minolim beraglov, minolim mochichan olav, and says Rabbi Yaakov in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that when Shmuel says that you have to undo your turban, you have to undo your head wrap, that is only if you're not wearing leather shoes, right? Shmuel said that wearing leather shoes on Shabbos was optional. But if you're wearing leather shoes on Shabbos, so then obviously you're not a mourner. You're wearing leather shoes, right? The whole point is that we don't want anybody to see you and say, wow, you're mourning. But if he's wearing already leather shoes, so Memele, he's not doing like a mourner, because mourners don't wear leather shoes. So once already he's wearing leather shoes, so Memele, he could have whatever head wrap he wants, because it's already clear from his leather shoes that he's demonstrating that he is not a mourner. Now, we had said a few minutes ago that according to Shmuel, any tearing of your clothing that isn't at the time of sort of intense emotion, when you first hear that this person passed away, it doesn't count. You don't just tear kriya at any random time. You tear kriya, right? Rending a garment, tearing a garment is something that you do out of great emotion. A fellow passed away, you feel very emotional, you tear your clothing. But if it's just at a random time, it doesn't count. The Shmuel, but one second. They said to Shmuel, Noch nafshe de Rav, that when they said to Shmuel that Rav passed away, Kara ale treisar mane, he tore up 12 different garments, i.e. at 12 different times. Omar, he said, that somebody passed away, that Rav passed away, he was a person that I had fear of. Says Rashi that he has fear, bekushis, with questions. Shmuel looked up to Rav. We saw that in the Gemara and Megillah, I believe. But Rav was a pretty big deal. So anyway, so we see that Shmuel Taka tore 12 garments. He didn't tear 12 garments all at once when he heard that Rav passed away. But rather, he tore them at different points. Amrle le Rabbi Yochanan, or probably Amrle probably, when they said to Rabbi Yochanan, Noch nafshib de Rabbi Chanina, that Rabbi Chanina passed away, Kar ale tleiser itstale milsa, he tore up 13 robes of fine silk. Omar Ozul Gavadav Mustafina Minay, he says that somebody passed away who I was in fear of in learning. No, so what do we see? So we see that both when Rav died and when Reb Chanina died, so Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan respectively tore their garments 12 and 13 times respectively. So we see that it's not only at the time that you hear about it, it's also at later points. And for the Gemara, well, the rabbis are unique, meaning Rav and Reb Chanina. That's a unique situation, because since we are mentioning their teachings all the time, so it's there are lots of opportunities to get emotional, and therefore, yes, it makes sense why Shmuel tore his garment tore 12 different garments at 12 different times, because each time a teaching of Rav came up, it was very emotional, and he tore at that time. But sort of in general, for a fellow that passes away, specifically the time to tear kriyas, at the time that you hear about it, the time that there's a significant amount of emotion. Amrle Ravin bar Ada l'Rave, says Ravin bar Ada to Rave, Amr Talmidcha Rav Amram, your student Rav Amram related the following. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Avil kol shiva koro lefanav, that a mourner for the entirety of the shiva, his tear, right, his torn garment is in front of him, visible. And if he wants to change the shirt, so he could change the shirt, I guess, but he has to tear that one as well. B'Shabbos kore l'achorav, on Shabbos, the tear is behind him. And if he wants to change his shirt, he changes his shirt and he does not tear kriya. So what do we see? So we see that a mourner, it says if he changes his shirt, he has to tear that one also. And obviously that's not necessarily happening at the time that he heard that the relative passed away. Right? It could be on a different day. So Kitanya so says the Gemara, well, that when we say that when you switch the shirt, you tear that one too, it's not because that's like, the halacha that you have to. It's out of honor for your if your father or mother passed away, so out of honor for them. So if you even if you switch your shirt, you will still tear it. But it's not because, that's when the main mitzvah of kriya is. No, the main mitzvah of kriya is at the time that you hear about it. But if it's your father, your mother, so out of respect, even if you change your shirt, you would tear kriya then as well, even though that's not sort of the main, tearing of a garment. The main tearing of one's garment is when you find out that somebody passed away. Also in Kroin Mesachnu in Mesach, in fact the Gemara, when you tear you tear your garment, right? So we had just said that in the middle of Shiva, if he changes his garment, so then he would tear that one as well. So, right, if it's for your father or your mother. So those tears that you do in the additional garments, we said that they're not the main tears, right? We said the other day that when it comes to your father and your mother, you don't ever fix the garment ever. But what about, maybe that's only by the initial tear, the one that's the main tear, the tear that happens when you first found out about the loss and it was very emotional. But what about these subsequent tears that we just do out of honor for your father and your mother? When you change your garment, can you sew those back together ultimately? So Pligi ba'avud rebushayu v'akapar, so it's taka machlokas. Who would have thought? Who knew this was a machlokas? Well, I'll tell you something. We at Babylon Talmud, we probably could have guessed. We probably could have guessed it was a machlokas. In fact, a very nice, clean machlokas. Chadomer ein mesachin, v'chadomer mesachin. It's a pretty nice, clean machlokas. Are you allowed to tear up these subsequent garments? One opinion's yes. The other opinion's no. Nice, clean machlokas. David Yoni Walkspress, he would like a nice clean machlokas like that. Tistayim davur d'Rabushayet domein misachin. So let's say that Mistam, it's the father of Rabushaya who says that you would not ever fix it. Dam Rabushaya, because Rabushaya says a misachin, that you would not fix these garments. Man shmir lav me avur. So who did he hear it from? Mistam, he heard it from his father. Right, because we know that Rabushaya's opinion is that you would not fix these garments, and Mistam heard it from his father, so it must be that it's Avud the Rabushaya who says that you don't fix the garments. Lo mibakapari Rabbi Shmile. No, I could just as easily argue that Rabushaya heard it from his teacher Bar Kapara. So you could just as easily argue that it's Bar Kapara who says that you would not fix it. All right. Omar Rava says Rava Avil Matail Unkali Besoch Beso, says Rava that a mourner would be allowed on Shabbos to walk within his own house in his torn clothing. Right? We had said that there's no mourning on Shabbos, and therefore, at least publicly, right, he wouldn't do anything that anybody would be able to tell that he's in mourning. But inside of his own house, he could wear his torn garments. Abaye Ashkechel Rav Yosef the forest le sudra areshe ve'azu v'asi b'veisei. Abaye found that Rav Yosef Taka was wearing this head covering on Shabbos in his house. Amarle, Abaye says to Rav Yosef, Lab Sover Lamar in Avelus b'Shabbos. Rav Yosef, don't you hold that there's no mourning on Shabbos? Why are you wearing this headscarf, this head wrap? Amarle Achi Amar Rav Yochanan Dvarim shebetzin noig. So Rav Yosef says, well, Rav Yochanan says that in private you would be allowed to do these things, that are for mourning, such as wearing this headscarf. So Rav Yosef says in private it would be allowed, quoting Rav Yochanan. All right, friends, who can tell me what I'm going to say? Let's go weiter. Rabbi Eliezer Mishchar b'Samikdash Atzeres K'Shabbos v'Chulei Uah. So in the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer had said that once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, so Shavuos, which is one day, is like Shabbos, right? That we don't have Avelus on Shabbos, but it counts as part of the 7. Rav Gidl bar Menashe Amar Shmuel, Halacha Rabbi Gamliel. So it says Rav Gidl bar Menashe in the name of Shmuel that halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are like the regalim, are like the festivals. All right, with regard to Avelus. However, there are those who say that Rav Gidl bar Menashe was talking about the following, was commenting on the following statement, on the following brayso, Kol Shloshim Yom Tinok Yotze B'Cheik, that if a baby, if an infant dies within the first 30 days of its life, so the baby doesn't have a coffin or anything like that. Rather, Yotze B'Cheik, you carry out the baby and then bury the baby. V'nikbar isha achas v'shnei anoshim, and the baby can be buried with one woman and 2 men, so that there's no yichud. Havalo b'isha echad v'shnei anoshim, but not with 1 man and 2 women, because that would be yichud, right? 1 man should not be secluded with 2 women. Abba Sholom, says Abba Shol, av b'ish echad v'shnei anoshim. Abba Shol says no, it's okay. In this context, in this circumstance, where a baby, an infant died, he can even be buried by 1 man and 2 women. Vein omdin olav b'shura, you would not make a line of mourners to comfort. So Rashi says that basically you'd have the mourners standing there, and then everybody would make a line and then and comfort the mourners. So you would not do that for a less than 30-day-old baby. And you don't say the blessing of mourners, which we're going to learn about Masechta Ksubis, or the consolation of mourners. Ben Shloshim, once a child is already 30 days old, Yotze B'dluskima, if he passes away, he would be taken out in like a box. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda lo dluskamani tells b'kosef. Now it's not a box that you can just carry on your shoulder. Elani tells bagapayim, something that requires 2 people to hold in their arms. V'omdin olav b'shura, and once the baby is already 30 days old, so then you would have a line of mourners comforting a line of consolers mourning, comforting the mourners. And you would say the blessing of mourners and the condolence, I don't know, make the mourners feel good. Ben Yud Beis Chodesh, once the child has already reached a milestone of 12 months, Yotze B'mita, so then he's taken out on a beer. What's a beer? Buyer. Buyer? Beer? Beer? Buyer? B-I-E-R. On that. What is that? I would Google it quickly now, but I'm using my phone for the recording. Maybe I'll just, no. Ich weiß nicht. A buyer? Beer? Ich weiß nicht. Goes on a mita, on a bed. Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva, Hu ben Shanav Evariv Kiven Shtaim, says Rabbi Akiva, in order for the baby to qualify for the bed, so then he has to be at least 2 years old in some respect. Either Hu ben Shanav Evariv Kiven Shtaim, either maybe he's 1 year old, but he's like big enough to be his limbs are like as if they were 2 years old. Hu ben shtein bevarv kiven shana, or the baby's at least 2 years old, but even if he's still very small, his limbs are very small. Yotzev mita, he would be able to go out on a bed. But I guess if he was one and looked one, then he wouldn't go out on a bed. I guess he would go out in a box. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, almost as Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Yotzev b'mita rab matziv and olav, that somebody who's taken out on a bier, B-I-E-R, so then people kind of notice and people cry and condole. Is that a word? I don't know. Eno yotzev mita, but if somebody does not go out in a bier, beer, B-I-E-R, ein rabim bed, ein rabim matziv and olav, so then, if he's not going to go out on this mita, so then the people don't get as emotional. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah almost says, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah nikol rabim, that if this child was already recognizable to the people, he was old enough that he went out on his own, people knew the child, so Rabbim is asking imo, so then the public gets involved with him in a nikol Rabbim. But if they don't know him, he was too young, he never went out on, the community didn't know him, ein Rabbim is asking imo, so then the community doesn't necessarily get involved with him. Umayim behesped, and what about with regard to eulogies? So Reb Meir b'shem Reb Yishmael Omer, so says Reb Meir in the name of Reb Yishmael, Aniyim b'nei shalosh asherim b'nei chamesh, that when it comes to poor people, so if a child passes away at 3 years old, so then you would eulogize the child. A wealthy family, so you'd only eulogize the child starting at 5 years old. And Rashi says because a poor family, their children are all that they have, and therefore apparently it's more emotional for them. Whereas a wealthy family, they at least have other things in life, whereas a poor family, all they have is their children, and therefore it's much more emotional, I guess, according to Rashi, and the Gemara, I guess, according to Rashi. Therefore, therefore, says Reb Meir in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, that for poor families, eulogies begin at if the child is 3 when he passes away, whereas 5 years, whereas wealthy families, it's 5 years. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishmo, says Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, Aniyim b'nei chomesh, Hashem b'nei sheish, that poor people eulogize the children beginning at 5, and wealthy families beginning at 6. And the children of elders are like the children of poor people, that it's the younger age that you can already start eulogizing. Amr of Gidol bar Menashe, Amr Shmuel, and on this is of Gidol bar Menashe, in the name of Shmuel, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda, Shamar Mishum Rabbi Shmuel, that Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, who says in the name of Rabbi Shmuel that poor families eulogies begin at 5, and wealthier families at 6. Darish Rabbi Anoni bar Sason a Pischa de Venesia. Rabbi Anoni bar Sason, he expounded by the entrance of the Nasi, Yom Echad Ifnei Atzeres v'Atzeres Harekan Arba Aser, that if somebody passed away on the day before Shavuos, so as we had said, that if somebody passes away before the Shalosh Ugalim, so then Shiva ends. So basically, right, so therefore, if somebody passes away the day before Shavuos, so then that day is like 7 days, right? Like all of the days of Shiva were sort of like compact into that one day. So it's as if 7 days of the Shloshim have already passed. Va'atzeres, as well as if you then take the next day as well, which is Shavuos, and as we've learned in the past, Shavuos has Tashlum and Kol Shiva, that even though Shavuos is only 1 day, still, if you didn't bring the Korban Chagiga, I guess. So you still have 7 days, right? An additional 6 days that you can offer it. So therefore, even Atzeres is considered like 7 days as well, even though it's only 1 day. So if somebody passed away on Erev Shavuos, so the first day counts as like the entire Shiva, and Shavuos, it's like a regular regel as though it had 7 days. So between the Erev Shavuos and Shavuos, it's like 14 days of the Shloshim already passed. Harikana Abba also, it's already 14 days. Shomer Rabbi Ami ve'ikpid. Rabbi Ami heard Rabbi Nani bar Sasun say this and he got upset. Omri said, Atu dide he, what? Is it Rabbi Nani bar Sasun who says this? Rabbi Lazar Amr Bushai. This is Rabbi Lazar in the name of Rabbi Bushai who says this. Darish Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Akilat Darish Gelusa. And Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha darshan the same thing, expanded the same thing by the entrance to the Reish Gelusa Yom Echad, by the exilarch Yom Echad Lifnei Atzeres V'Atzeres Harikan Arba Asur, that the day before Shavuos plus Shavuos already counts as 14 of the 30 days of Shloshim. Shomer Rav Sheshes Ikbid Rav Sheshes heard Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha say this and he got upset. Omar Atu Didei, this isn't Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha's Torah. Rabbi Lazar Amr Bushai. It's Rabbi Lazar Amr Bushai. The Amr Lazar Bushai Amr Bushai. How do you know that Shavuos has a total of 7 days, basically a total of additional 6 days, but that you have 7 days to offer the Korban Chagiga, even though Shavuos itself is only 1 day? Shneimar, as the pasuk says, b'chag hamatzos v'chag Shavuos, on Sukkos and Shavuos, machag hamatzos yesh la tashlum kol shiva, av chag Shavuos yesh la tashlum kol shiva. That just like on what did I say? B'chag hamatzos on what's it called? On Pesach, b'chag Shavuos and on Shavuos. I'm going to read that again. Machag hamatzos yesh la tashlum kol shiva. Just like Pesach, you have 7 days to offer the Korban Chagiga. Av kol chag Shavuos yesh la tashlum kol shiva. Also, the festival of Shavuos, you have 7 days to offer your Korban. So we see that even Shavuos, even though it's 1 day, it's like a regular festival as though it's 7 days. So if somebody passes away on Erev Shavuos plus Shavuos, you already have 14. It's as if it's already 14 days of the Shloshim. Adbe Rav Papa Rav Av Yosava, that Rav Papa found, he took Rav Av Yosava and he darshan v'darash Yom Echad Lifnei Rosh Hashanah v'Rosh Hashanah Harikan Haba Aser, that the day before Rosh Hashanah plus Rosh Hashanah is also considered like 14. Ravina Hilkach, says Ravina, therefore, Yom Echad Lifnei Achag V'chag V'shmini Shelo, if you take the Erev Sukkos, or if somebody passes away on Erev Sukkos, plus the entirety of Sukkos, plus Shmini Atzeres, Harikan Esem Ve'echad. It's as if now already 21 of the 30 days of Shloshim have already passed. Harikan Esem Ve'echad Yom. Ravina Ikla the Surah Defaros. Ravina visited Surah Defaros. Amalei Rav Chaviva Mi Surah Defaros to Ravina. So Rav Chaviva from Surah Defaros says to Ravina, Amar Mar Yom Echad Lifnei Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah Harikan Arba Aser. That where am I? So Rav Chaviva from Surah the Forest asked Ravina, says, I'm going to read that again. Amar Mar, is it true? Right? Is it true? Did you say that Yom Echad Lifnei Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah Harikan Arba Aser, that if somebody passes away the day before, right? If somebody's relative passes away the day before Rosh Hashanah, and then you have Rosh Hashanah, it already counts as 14 of the Shloshim, 14 days of the Shloshim. Amalei Ravina responds, Ono mistabra kram Gamliel Luda Amina. What I said is that it makes sense that the law is like Rabbi Gamliel. That Rabbi Gamliel said that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are like the Shalosh Regalim, and therefore, just like the Shalosh Regalim count as 7 days, so then therefore Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur also were to count as 7 days, and therefore Erev Rosh Hashanah plus Rosh Hashanah would already be 14 days. Friends, that was the Chav Daled of Masechta Moed Katan. I hope you enjoyed. We talked about, we continued to say that there's no Avelos on Shabbos. We then, Shmuel had given examples of things that you must sort of do to indicate that Shabbos is not a day of mourning. For example, you must take off your head wrap. For example, you must turn around with the tear, and you got to fix your bed. However, things like nilas asandal, right, leather shoes, marital relations, washing your hands and feet in warm water, those things are optional. Rav adds to the list that also the head wrap would be optional as well. We said that the time really to tear kriya is the time of when you're very emotional, right? When you first hear about that this person passed away. We said that Talmidei Chachamim, right? Every time that you hear their teachings, it like becomes a new sort of emotional thing. And we saw that Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan would they tore their clothes on many occasions after Rav and Rabbi Chanina passed away. We said that for one's father and mother, even if you change your shirt, you would tear kriya on that shirt as well. There was a shaila, can you then sew it back together? We saw machlokas between the father of Rabbi Oshaya and Bar Kapara about can you tear, for the subsequent tears of shirts, when you change your shirts for your father and mother, can you fix that tear or not? It's machlokas, yes, no, fine. We said that if a child passes away less than 30 days, so then he doesn't have he's not buried in a box or anything. You just carry the child and bury him, and there's no special mourning or anything like that. After 30 days, the child is buried in a box, and there's a line of comforters, of mourners, and they say the Birkas Abelim and Birkas Tanchumin, and then after 12 months already, he would be buried in like a bier bed kind of thing. He would be carried out, and then people would eulogize him. We said, at what age do eulogies begin, right? At what point do you begin to say eulogies? Tanakama says that for poor people, it's at 3, once a child, if he passes away after 3 years old. For wealthy people, it's 5 years old. Rabbi Yehuda says for poor people, it's 5 years old. For wealthy people, it is 6 years old. And then we said, interestingly, that if somebody passes away on Erev Shavuos, then before you know it, it's already as though 14 days of the Shloshim have passed, because the Erev Shavuos counts basically as all of Shiva, and then Shavuos, because it has Tashlumin to make up the Korban if you didn't offer it on Shavuos. So then it's as if Shavuos is another 7 days, so it's like 14 days of 30 days have passed. Friends, that was Daf Chavdal of Masechta Moed Katan. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.